Well, good morning. It's about 8:15, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. I am Katia McLean. I'm the president of the board for the San Jose Downtown Association, and I wanted to welcome you all to our San Jose Downtown public meeting for the Board of Directors and Business Improvement District members, and it's our first public meeting of 2021. We are going to have 3 great presentations and conversations, so if you have any questions or comments, please be respectful, but also we will ask you to please put them on the chat, and we will hopefully, get to answer most of your questions. But if we don't, then we will go and respond to some of them during our announcements on Thursday. Happy Lunar Year and happy Valentine's weekend. I have to accept that I've never been a super fan, Valentine's Day. Jessica, if you don't mind putting our red heart. However, I think it's a good time particularly this year, to recommit of being better partners, better friends, better parents, and better people in general. But it's also a good time to be intentional about showing what we care about, showing people that we care, and what better way to do it than actually showing our love to our downtown businesses. They're open, so please go downtown, order online, order dinner, treats. And also the arts community has some very unique experiences and events that you can enjoy. So check our website and our newsletter, you will have some additional information. In December, I talk about my love for cookies. So welcome Insomnia Cookies to downtown. And next slide. I also wanted to let everybody know that we are happy to announce that the dog park at Sofa's Pocket Park is opening this next Thursday. So take some photos of your dog downtown, post them on social media. We will have some contest. Go to the next page. And the Sofa Pocket Park is located in the old Emil's parking lot, next to the Museum of Quilts and in front of Parque de los Pobladores, and we will do an official opening in April. Next slide. It's actually great to have seen this past week, people already installing the turf, the synthetic turf, and making sure that that is ready for our residents. And next. As I mentioned, we're very, very excited that in April we can do a grand opening and have this vision for this, what is a small lot, but that can make a big difference downtown. Next. And we always like to show what we're doing and the great things that are happening downtown. However, in the past couple of weeks, we have seen an increase in crime, and things actually have not been so great, in the past couple of weeks, to the point that one of our San Jose Downtown officers' family members was directly affected to this crime. We reached out to the police and they were very responsive. We're very grateful. And we think that they understand that in order for us and people to feel comfortable coming back downtown, it needs to be a safe area. So you will hear firsthand from Deputy Police Chief Heather Randall and Central Division Captain Stan McFadden, to give us an update. I'll pass it to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen before I get started here. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Deputy Chief Heather Randall, and I am the BFO Deputy Chief of the San Jose Police Department. So I'm going to share a short presentation about our efforts to address our downtown community concerns, like you just heard. And we have seen some things downtown, and we want to be responsive to that and really help the businesses and make it a vibrant area. So we're going to talk about the crime. We're going to talk about some of those quality of life issues, and then share with you our strategic plan. I have Captain Stan McFadden also here. He's been outstanding. I'm sure all of you have had a chance to meet him. I'm so lucky to have him, and they've really put together a great plan for us. So we'll start off by just addressing the concerns that we're seeing and we're hearing from you and from the community. And we kind of boiled them down. The quality of life concerns that we're seeing revolve around narcotics, the assaults that are happening, theft, and then robberies. And we see a lot of intersectionality with crimes like this. And so we also look at the community problems and what might be driving some of these things. Mental health, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and the unhoused, and then blight. And so that helps us, when we boil it down like that, it helps us have a more directed strategic plan. All right, so what we're doing right now. So we've already deployed a lot of strategies, and I want to share with you some of those proactive efforts that we're deploying right now. We do have quality, our quality of life cars, and those are really focused at prevention, intervention, and suppression. And they're out there 2 days a week. We have our foot patrol team. Again, they are doing some intervention efforts, but also education. And so they do contact business owners. They're out there talking to people, educating folks on what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. And they're out there 4 days a week. We also have our high needs foot patrol team. And what we're doing with those is we are taking some of the data that we have based on crime stats, the calls for service, arrests that are made, and we're really focusing in on specific locations. And so that's a data-driven predictive policing effort. And also mixing in the community concerns. So we hear from you and we deploy our officers to address some of those concerns, and they're out there 4 days a week. I'm sure you've heard in the news, we also have our mobile crisis response team. These are advanced trained officers that have extra training in that crisis intervention, and they're paired with clinicians. And so they go out into the field, they're deployed twice a week on various days. They are contacting subjects who we have frequent contact with, both criminally and with mental health perspectives in mind. What we're trying to do is really give the clinicians a lead, and they're doing assessments. They are providing resources, and there are times when they will take that extra step and place someone on a hold for further evaluation. And what we found is this program has been very successful. It's on a very small basis right now, but we're looking to expand that. We're also working with adult probation, and this is important because what we're seeing is we are making arrests, and then individuals are going back out, going right back to the same location and reoffending. And so we're working with them on some new strategies, including stay away orders as a result or as a condition of their probation. We're hoping that will have a more lasting effect. Okay, so now our 3-month strategic plan. So we're going to leverage MCRT. We're going to have more front-end collaboration. So that's important because, as we do that proactive work in terms of getting individuals the help they need for a mental health crisis is very important. So we'll be working collaboratively with the county. We'll be working collaboratively with Judge Manley to assist when we look at crimes and that intersectionality with mental health. The idea is to get those individuals into a more robust treatment plan. And I have to credit Captain McFadden with this next point. He is doing a great job with communication. So we now, we're going to have an internal and external newsletters that we're going to be handing out. And this is going to improve really the communication internally, so everybody knows the plan, knows what we're doing, knows some of our successes, and we're going to share that both internally and externally in Central Division. We're collaborating with the District Attorney's Office on case issuing and crime strategies, and really looking again at those repeat offenders and what can we do, what more can we do to address those issues. We are reimagining the traditional neighborhood watch, especially in the downtown area. As it becomes more congested, we need to come up with new strategies and new plans to get everyone on board for that shared responsibility. And then we're working with our advocacy service providers. We want to bolster placement rates for individuals who are, again, our repeat offenders. All right, so we do have a 6-month strategic plan, and we like to do it this way because we want to have markers. So as we move forward and we get farther into this plan, we want to see where we are at 3 months and then 6 months. But these strategies will be reviewed as we go, and we'll see what's successful and make changes as we need to. But what we've noticed is that traditional business watch has not been useful in the downtown core, and we want to change that and add to it and make sure that we go beyond prevention and empower business owners to take control. So as you can see here, we have some things that we're going to be doing. Stop program refresher training. We're going to create and implement basic industry standards for their security staff. We want to make sure that if you have security, they're using best practices and that they're doing what they need to do to help us. Again, a shared effort. Business and property owner collaboration. We need to get everyone together so we understand the plan, we understand what we each need to do to be successful. And then victim vulnerability assessment. Again, very important because that prevention piece is so key as we look to reduce the amount of crimes that are occurring. And then, and this is also a great piece of it too, the security director outreach. We want to increase their accountability, make sure that they're doing what they can to help business owners and improve that quality. This next point is extremely important too, the importance of accurately reporting to 911 and evidence preservation. This is so important for us because we need to have those calls come in. We need to know what's happening in the downtown area so we can deploy our resources effectively. And then implement emergency procedures and have a security director collaboration group. All right, so this slide, we put this slide up here because we want you to see everybody that we want to bring to the table. It's going to be so important that we all work together to really gain ground downtown. But before I close, I want to talk about just some great police work that Captain McFadden and his team have done just in the last 30 days. And we know that there have been issues, and certainly they are doing a great job out there being very proactive. At 30 East Santa Clara Street, we had a subject commit a burglary on 2 separate occasions. We processed the scene and then conducted a probation search, and we recovered some property. We've identified the suspect and are currently working on a very solid lead on that case. The Britannia Arms was burglarized. Our #1 most active repeat offender is the person that we've identified as the individual who broke in. We developed intelligence and apprehended that suspect within 1 day. The Vibes Hookah Lounge at 4th and St. John, again, our #2 most active repeat offender. And we know this because we use our crime intelligence data, but he gained entrance into the building and started vandalizing. Our units responded very quickly and arrested the suspect at the scene. And then Paseo Plaza condominiums, we had numerous suspects accessing the underground parking. And what they were doing was they were following residents who were driving in through the gated area. Our burglary unit reviewed 40 cases and put them all together. They were able to identify and then arrest and prosecute 3 of the suspects responsible for that. At 2nd and Fountain Alley, we know that there have been issues there, but in response to concerns we received from the business owners, we did some undercover operations, and it resulted in an arrest for transportation and sales of narcotics. We're continuing to do work in that area, and on one occasion, our foot patrol officers viewed an attempted assault with a deadly weapon, and they were able to apprehend the suspect right there on scene. So, I mean, there's been some great police work. I'm gonna end the sharing here. There we go. Lastly, we do know that we had a homicide at the beginning of the year on Waz Way, but we were able to identify the suspect and take him into custody very, very quickly. So I want to just thank Captain McFadden for all of his work that he's done. It's been tremendous. And I think we're seeing a lot of great results, but we have a lot of work to do. So I hope that this can outline our direction for you and understand what our plan is moving into the next 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Heather Randall, and thank you, Captain McFadden. There are some questions popping up, and some from Facebook and some from the chat. So I will start with an easy one. Would you be able to post, or share with us the 6-month plan, for people to take a closer look?
Absolutely. We have the slide right here, and I think it would be
Perfect.
very easy to just share it. We want folks to know what we're doing and certainly understand some of the complexities of addressing these issues. But I think it'd be great for them to know the plan.
Another question that came up, and I'm combining a couple, is about resources. Do you have enough people? And you were talking about how it's not just about, going to a crime scene and solving it at that moment, but that there's some prevention, there's some partnerships, there's a lot of work that it's happening. So tell us a little bit about resources. Can we see more police, downtown? And tell us a little bit of what your plan is.
Well, as we know, we are a thinly staffed police department, right? So we have to be very strategic about how we deploy those resources. So I've shared some of the additional resources we have, our foot patrols, our high need foot patrols, our MCRT. So those are the resources that we're going to be directing to those areas where we're seeing crime happen. This is, and it needs to be, a shared responsibility. The police department, yes, has a finite amount of resources. So that's why it's so important to collaborate on the front end. We need to get businesses on board. We need to get our service providers on board so that we can all work together. I think right now this plan it's very well thought out, and it's going to be addressing the crime where it's happening and really looking at more focused policing, and then in conjunction with those preventative measures.
I'm going to switch a little bit and ask you about your officers. As we have an office downtown, and sometimes when the staff doesn't see the results, the immediate results, it's tough for them to keep motivated to continue doing their work. So how is the current county's no bail policy affecting your officers' motivation to book somebody when they may be released in less time that it takes them to write the arrest report?
Well, we share the frustration. We understand it. But I will tell you this, and I've felt this for the 23 years that I've been here. We don't have to do much to motivate our officers. They like to do proactive policing. We don't worry so much about the back end. I mean, when we're actually making arrests. So if we're going to make an arrest, we're going to make it because we have probable cause to do so, and we want to make an impact out there in your business area. We can't control the uncontrollable. So what we're doing is we are working on other measures, like I mentioned before, working with adult probation for some stay away orders, because we know what happens. Individuals get arrested, they get out in a very short time, and they come right back to the same area. And we're seeing this. And so we want to put some strategic plans in place to help combat that. And that might be in terms of stay away orders. It might be diverting people to other resources through the county, through our service providers. So there's going to be other things we need to do because we are far beyond knowing we can just arrest our way out of this problem. We have to bring in these other strategic plans and other service providers to help us.
I think we understand that, yes, you cannot do this alone. I mean, there's the partnerships are key. So tell us how those partnerships may help with the unhoused that affect the people, feeling safe going downtown if they get aggressive, but also if they have some mental illness, but also you are responding to those. And what is your approach?
So I think, in this area, this is where programs like our mobile crisis response team will be key, because now we're bringing clinicians with us to contact these individuals. And what we're looking at is more long-term resources for these folks. So that's our approach right now. We are looking to expand that program into a permanent unit. So we'll have officers paired with clinicians 7 days a week. I think that's really where we're going to see the most ground gained. you know, we know we have individuals downtown that are the repeat offenders, and that's part of the plan for our mobile crisis response team, is to go out and contact those individuals, direct them to resources, get more placement for them for that long-term mental health care. That's where we need to focus our efforts right now. And really, we need to bring the county in. We need to bring those service providers in more, but that's that first step, is getting them out to the field with the officers. And we've already seen some really good success with this program. And we're thinking that as we expand it, we're going to see more success.
There was a question in the chat. Is it true that the crime is actually coming from those homeless encampments?
You know, it's really difficult to draw a line, you know, from one thing to another. So we can't really do that. And so what we're doing is we are focusing on individuals. And we know, like I had mentioned before, some of the great police work that has occurred, those are repeat offender individuals. And so we know who these folks are. And so we can't necessarily say crime comes from an encampment, but sometimes we can say this person is a repeat offender. And so we're going to focus our efforts there. The unhoused need police protection just as much as anybody else does. I mean, there are individuals in there that are fearful. And so we want to really focus our efforts on the actual offenders and not necessarily on an area or an encampment. We want to have that directed policing to have that long-term effect.
Let's switch a little bit. And because of the pandemic conditions, we have heard that the police has been responding to violent felonies. What happens with those low-level crime, things that happen in every city? I was born in Mexico City, so I know how it is. So tell us a little bit about, that activity that sometimes may go just under the radar.
Right, and we're talking about those lower level type crimes. Well, and here's what I'll say about that. They're important to us because they're important to the community, they're important to the business community. And we know that quality of life issues affect every neighborhood in our city. So they're important. We have to continue prioritizing calls. Of course, those emergency calls will get dispatched first, but that's where plans like this come into play. When we have a strategic plan, when we bring everybody in, we can address those concerns, those quality of life concerns. And we do it by doing those preventative measures. We do it by bringing in services. We do it by also directed policing. So, the quality of life issues are important. And while, again, we'll still prioritize calls, we have a plan in place to specifically address those issues. So I think, we're going to have to, we'll review, we're going to come back and review it and see how our efforts are working. We might have to make some changes, but we're confident this is a solid plan. And we're going to hear back from you guys. And we know that we're not going to solve every issue right away, right? And there's always going to be something, but we're going to hear back from you. And then we'll work together moving forward to address those issues.
I'm going to switch it a little bit again, and that is about equity. Tell us what one of our priorities at the San Jose Downtown Association is use that equity lens in everything that we do, from recruiting to the services that we provide to making downtown available for everybody, not just for a few. So tell us what is, what are you doing? What is the department doing?
Well, I'll start with recruiting. So I actually had the opportunity and challenge. I was sent down to the recruiting and background unit back in 2015. And this is when we were losing officers left and right. We were at an all-time low. And so I had the honor and privilege of restructuring our recruiting outreach with a focus on diversity. So instead of just looking for people who traditionally go into law enforcement, we really looked at applicant pools that brought diversity into our department because we want to reflect our community as closely as possible. So we looked in other areas, not just criminal justice majors, not just military. We looked for people with social science degrees. We looked at other sporting events. We looked all around, and what we started to see was that through some changes in our backgrounding and not lowering standards, but just looking at the applicant at their value system, at their belief system? How would it fit and align with our department goals? What do they bring to our department in terms of diversity? And by that, I mean diversity in race, culture, religion, gender, diversity of thought and education. So what we saw now was these recruiting classes that were the most diverse we've ever seen in the history of our department, including the most women we've ever had in one academy class. I'm super proud about that. But that's where we start, right? We start with making a police department that is diverse and it reflects our community. The second part of that is getting diversity up through the ranks. And so that's something that we take very seriously. I'm going to just throw a little shout out to Captain McFadden, who has been doing an outstanding job identifying officers just starting their career and getting them into community policing positions, getting them involved in outreach. And so that's, how we change our department and really make it diverse. The equity lens is extremely important for us. And, we often in policing, we look at how we deploy our resources based on crime stats, right? But we also have to look at it through an equity lens as well. And how are we serving our neighborhoods? How are we serving the neighborhoods who need us most? Making sure that we're not taking away from one neighborhood, but we're really understanding some of the unique challenges that our communities have. So we're really learning how to apply that equity lens. Here's a perfect example. In our financial crimes unit, we have a dollar threshold when we assign cases, and we have to prioritize, right? We don't have enough detectives there. But if we set the threshold at $10,000, that may be a little bit of money or a lot of money, depending on who's victimized. And so we have to consider that person who's been victimized and how this affects them. And that's really looking at things through that equity lens. But as we learn more as a department, as we start to collaborate with our Office of Racial Equity, I think we're going to learn more and how to bring that even further into the police department and everything that we do.
And there are a lot of comments on the chat about giving thumbs up to Captain McFadden. So thank you for all that you do. So my last question is a two-pronged. One is, what should people do if they are walking around St. James Park and they see something that shouldn't be happening? And second is, as a business owner, what should business owners do? And what is the best recourse? Sometimes they don't even want to call the police because it's somebody that they see all the time in the community and they may not see a threat. But what if it escalates? What should they do? How should they reach out to the police?
Well, I can answer both of those questions the same. So we want people to call the police and let us know what's happening. We understand that sometimes they call and we're not able to respond right away. So we understand that, and it's frustrating. But the important part about that phone call is it gives us information about what's happening. Sometimes it can identify a suspect. It lets us know where we're starting to see trends and spikes in crime. So it's important that we get that information. We want the community to know that we want to respond to everything. But sometimes, just depending on the day, depending on the call volume, we can't get there right away. But that information is so critically important to us. And when you look at the strategic plan I talked about, we are deploying some of our resources in those high crime areas, right? We're looking at data. We're making sure that we're doing focused policing. So those calls to 911 are important because it provides us with very important data. So I would just encourage people, please call us, please let us know what's happening. If you're not getting the response that you feel you should get, either as somebody just visiting a park or a business owner, let us know. All of us have Captain McFadden's email or my email. Let us know. And we'll fold that into our plan. It's just great intel to share with our officers and our supervisors. So I encourage people to call.
Well, thank you, Captain McFadden, and thank you, Deputy Chief Randall, for talking to us. And it's very important for our members, but also for the public to hear firsthand from you what the plan is. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Before I move into the next presentation, I want to thank some of our city officials that are joining us this morning. City Manager Dave Sykes, City of San Jose Planning, Building, Code Enforcement Director Rosalind Hugh, and DOT Director John Risto. Thank you for joining us this morning. We talk about clean and safe and small businesses and equity. That are some of our priorities. However, one of our 5 priorities is the PBID renewal. So Operations Manager Chloe Ship will provide an update. Chloe?
Good morning, all. As Katia said, I'm Operations Manager for the San Jose Downtown Association. I'm going to start a quick presentation. Many of you probably have heard of our Property-Based Improvement District, or as we commonly call it, PBID. We serve the downtown core, providing services on a higher scale in our premium zone and slightly lower scale in our basic zone. PBID is an acronym that probably confuses you. A property-based improvement district is a special assessment district that assesses real properties. So those of you that pay property taxes, you may see the downtown PBID on your bill, and we provide special benefits. PBIDs are established for a fixed period of time and have management plans that govern all of the programming and services that we provide, as well as how the assessment rates are calculated. Our current PBID has 4 groups of services. First being our Groundworks Clean and Safe team. We have a staff of 30 individuals who are cleaning ambassadors, safety ambassadors, pressure washers, and all-terrain litter vacuum operators. My personal favorite, it looks a little bit like a Zamboni. We also have business support services where you can receive assistance with permitting, process assistance with the city and county various city and county departments, and even sort of matchmaking with potential retail tenants and commercial landlords. Our street life and beautification focuses on tree trimming, landscaping, murals, temporary activation interventions, and capital projects like Moment, Hart's Dog Park, and the Sofa Park at Park you got a sneak peek of today. On the safety side, we also employ off-duty SJPD officers in something called a secondary employment unit, and they're really walking and driving through downtown, addressing quality of life issues. Important to note that Captain McFadden and I and our SEU coordinator are in regular communication on what they're seeing so that our SEU officers can share out with the day shift officers the conditions that we have downtown. You're probably wondering what renewal means and why we're talking about it and why it's a priority. As I mentioned, our district is set for a fixed period of time, and it currently expires in December 31st, 2022. And so we're in this process right now of renewal where we're looking to define what the PBID is going to be in our next phase. It's a 2-part process where our property owners are able to provide feedback and actually vote, once with a petition and second with a ballot to say, yes, please assess these rates so that we can get these services. Right now, we're at the very beginning of this process, and we're starting to engage with stakeholders on our service delivery, assessment rates, boundaries, and really just about everything in between. We want to know what services are needed downtown. Do we need a greater mix of Groundworks employees and services there, like connection with social services? Do we need to up our street life game and plant more plants or create more murals on private property? After the ballot phase of this process, the PBID actually will go before the city council to vote and approve. We are aiming to start the new district actually on July 1st, 2022 to be consistent with the fiscal calendar year. So this is our timeline right now. We are in that strategic planning for the district. And as I mentioned, we really do want to hear your feedback because you know more than I do about what it is to be a business owner or a resident in downtown. And as I mentioned, that feedback, we really want to know frequency of services, types of services offered, what services are needed most. And myself and Director of Policy and Operations, Nathan Ulsh, are leading this charge. So you can always get a hold of us. Our emails are here and Nathan will put those in chat so that you have them. The chat will be saved as mentioned previously, so you don't have to rush to copy and paste. But we look forward to hearing how you interpret our services now and how we could better serve you in the third phase of the PBID.
Thank you, Chloe. And next, I would like to introduce Deputy City Manager Kim Walesh, who is sadly, leaving the city, March 30th. Sadly for us, but, not for her. I actually read that she mentioned that she fell in love with the people and the potential of San Jose 18 years ago. And now that she will be exploring the next stage in her life, I also heard that she may be remodeling her house. So you're going to have to continue talking to architects. Sorry, you're not going to escape, some of those design conversations. And I also heard that you have a dog, Eagle. So if you can, take some photos of your dog, downtown. Oh, excellent. Take some photos, go downtown and just post to them. And then we will have some good memories of you downtown. I feel that you have paved the way for us to have a better city, a city that is vibrant, but also an approach to economic development that is rooted in small businesses, in the arts, in public space, on the people, more than just policy. As a woman in leadership, you have been an inspiration to many of us in the community. And who better to interview you than our Executive Director, Scott Neese, who has been working with you, your entire time in the city. So I'll pass it to both of you.
Thank you. Hey, Kim, we're gonna have some fun here this morning.
Sounds good, Scott.
Typically we would be at one of our great downtown venues. You and I would be sitting up in some chairs up on a stage, and the smells of coffee and continental breakfast. But this pandemic, man, the last 11 months has changed so many things. Are you getting a little burned out in Zoom yet?
Well, Scott, Zoom is headquartered in downtown San Jose. We're so proud of Zoom. I think it's in my contract. I can't admit to Zoom fatigue. I thank God for Zoom, that we can at least still look in each other's eyes and see each other's faces and do work and check in on each other.
Well, I see that Eagle is snoozing there in the background. We can't wait to get him to the Sofa Pocket Park. But I think, Katia talked a little bit about your background. I met you when you were still at Collaborative Economics. And I remember just before you joined the city, you published or co-wrote a couple different books: Grassroots Leaders for a New Economy, How Civic Entrepreneurs Are Building Prosperous Communities, and Civic Revolutionaries, Igniting the Passion for Change in America's Communities. How has your revolutionary passion evolved after 18 years inside the city?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I've loved my career, and I had a first career as an economic development consultant, first at the Stanford Research Institute, and then with a new firm called Collaborative Economics that I founded with Doug Henton, who was my most important mentor. And it was interesting. We worked all over the U.S. We helped start joint venture Silicon Valley here, and we just noticed everywhere that there had been this model of community leadership that was closed door decision making, like where the mayor and the head of the newspaper and the head of the bank, these guys would kind of all get in a room and they made decisions that charted the course of a city's future. And then that started to change, right, with demographic change, women, people of color, young people, wanted a voice. And with globalization, those corporate leaders just were no longer so connected to place. So yeah, so those books were about these new models of what it takes for communities to succeed. And it's collaboration, and it's inclusive civic engagement. And it's this new kind of leader. I don't think I'd call them revolutionaries these days, but we coined this term civic entrepreneurs. And civic entrepreneurs are exactly what the Downtown Association is full of. People who work across sectors and across boundaries and steward and steer a community over time. So yeah, my passion is obviously still there, and it's been a great laboratory to see how these ideas about new community leadership have played out in San Jose.
10 years ago, you rose from chief strategist and assistant director of economic development to become the director of the Office of Economic Development. Then in 2014, you were promoted to a dual role also as deputy city manager. At the time, at least to me, it seemed you reluctantly accepted the promotion. Were you able to continue the strategy work that you're so good at, as well as the duties of a deputy city manager to your satisfaction?
Yeah, it's so interesting to look back on your career. I realized what I was reluctant about was stepping into that department director role 10 years ago. I was very comfortable being the behind the scenes number 2 person. And then the prior economic development director left suddenly, and I was asked to step up, and it was not something I ever had my eye on. I actually volunteered to, lead the search to find the new director of economic development. And I tell you what happened was Deb Fagoni encouraged me, and Harry Mavrogenis. I give him so much credit. At one point, he just sat me down. He said, "Kim, really? They're gonna do a national search and bring in some guy from Tampa, and you're gonna, back him up and support him? This is your time." And I thought that I'd taken the promotion. Maybe I had to behave and act and focus on the things that prior person did in the directorship. And it turned out that was completely wrong. That I think we all need to learn this, that sometimes it's our time for leadership, and what we have to bring, our style and our focus. I think it turned out to be exactly what San Jose needed. And I've grown, and I've been able to work with such amazing people, and I hope have a positive impact. And, I'm not a big believer in complex theories of strategy. To me, I think we all can be strategic, and it's really just about, seeing the whole field and seeing connections and, focusing on certain things, deciding what you're not going to do, and really being intentional about how you show up as a leader. And I think that's things that we all do. So plenty of time every day to try to be strategic in our work.
One of the phrases that we're hearing all the time now is that the pandemic has accelerated these trends that were already in motion in our cities. So what do you see are some of the biggest changes the city of San Jose has faced this past year, these past 11 months during this health and economic crisis? And how is the city positioned for the rest of this year?
Yeah, so I know I've talked before at the Downtown Association that economy and equity in the long run, they're so interdependent. Like, you can't have a strong economy unless you focus on equity. And if you care about equity, you need a strong economy to create opportunity for people. So to me, one of the biggest changes is that I think COVID has opened our eyes to really understanding the inequality and the work that we need to do to address what it's like, say, for the lowest income, 20 or 30% of the people who live in our midst. Been very involved in the COVID response and recovery effort. And it's so striking that even before the pandemic, about 30% of our households were living below self-sufficiency. And right now, those folks have lost 2/3 of their income. They're living on $1,000 a month, right? Their rent is $1,700 a month on average. And so they're in a fight for survival, right? And there's fear and there's anxiety. And I think finally we have a sense that we are all in this together, and we have a lot more empathy, and I think we need to. I think also there's been eyes wide open about the history of racial inequity in San Jose. And there's much more of a commitment, I think, to understand. I grew up in Milwaukee, and in Milwaukee, racism, structural racism, it was obvious. It was actually one of the reasons why I think I left. It was uncomfortable for me. And I know I came to California and I thought, oh, it's multicultural. And it's like, it's different here. And I know, especially with Dave Sykes' leadership as our city manager 3 years ago, we really started to learn about the history of inequity and racism in San Jose and in the Bay Area. And I just want to commend, because it does open your eyes. There's 2 books. One is The Devil in Silicon Valley by Stephen Pitty, The Devil Being Racism, which is a history of Mexicans, Mexican Americans, indigenous people in San Jose, in Silicon Valley. And the other is The Color of Law. So I do think it's really important for us now to sort of work on these issues. And we're putting together a 3-year recovery strategy for San Jose, which is clearly going to focus on the most vulnerable small businesses, commercial corridors, and families. We're going to be dependent and hope for a lot more federal funds. Construction is really a bright spot. I mean, I want everybody to know, between those home remodels and almost all of our major projects continuing to construct, we've had like a 0.1% decline in construction activity in San Jose compared to about 9% in the Bay Area. So I think we're well positioned. We're going to need a lot of federal funds, but we're positioned in the sense of knowing what we need to do and what we need to focus on. And I think this collaboration between community organizations like the Downtown Association and CBOs, the city, and as was said earlier, the county, is going to be so essential to pull us out of this.
The small business community is also fighting for survival, and we hear all the time that the heart and soul of a community is really reflected in its storefronts. And you already said that this is going to be part of the city's, recovery efforts. But as you see COVID receding, how do you see it rolling out downtown, especially for offices and the future of work and the small business ecosystem in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were all so proud that pre-COVID, the momentum and the vibrancy and the interest in our downtown, like, truly was at an all-time peak. And then what happened, obviously, we lost all the drivers of that. Again, we lost the conventions and meetings. We lost the events. We lost the office workers. We lost the students. And so we really now are in a battling back serious position. And I think the first step is all of us to do everything we can to try to avoid permanent damage and closure of our restaurants and our retailers who we work so hard to bring into the downtown. And I just want to encourage everybody to do what you can to buy those gift cards and buy those meals and buy those succulents at Moment, because all of that really makes a big difference. The Deputy Chief Randall did a fabulous job of talking about what we need to do for safe, clean sidewalks and these quality of life issues. The city manager, the mayor, the downtown council member, the city departments, we are very committed to now put together a comprehensive plan of a package of solutions that can have positive impact, and to advance that through the city's budget process this year. So that's absolutely essential. We're going to need to work together with the PBID, Downtown Association, on vacant storefronts, right? What is it going to take for our owners to take the boards down and to feel comfortable reopening? We're doing everything we can to get financial assistance to them. My last 6 weeks, I'm going to be a champion of al fresco forever, right? What do we need to do to sort of keep it going? And I just really believe we're going to get there. It's going to take a number of years. But I believe downtown is going to play such a critical role in our community's healing. All this work that we've done the last 10 years on public life and public spaces, when our, collective loss and collective trauma needs to turn to collective joy and celebration, people are going to flock into the downtown, and we're going to want to be together, listening to music, hanging out outdoors. And I think downtown as a central gathering place is going to be more important than ever.
Tim, I'd like to follow up on something that you just mentioned, this alfresco forever. So currently, let's just use San Pedro Street, since we did pilots, we did the Super Bowl stuff there. We close it for the farmers market on Fridays. And the emergency order that allows closure of that alfresco street is only through June 30th. So it seems to me now's the time to be talking, but the preliminary talks we've had, we need a fire lane. We need access to the manhole covers. We need, these, I'm not hearing your spirit, and I'm concerned that, we're going to lose your energy and your leadership at the end of March. And then the bureaucracy doesn't understand that everything is dependent on this recovery, and we have to start thinking differently.
Yeah, honestly, Scott, I'm not concerned at all. We've built a small army of big believers in public life and outdoor dining across the whole city government. I think we've worked through a ton of issues to make this happen in the emergency, and those lessons and that spirit can extend through the recovery period. The most important thing we need to hear is that the businesses in the corridor want this to continue, right? That there's consensus and enthusiasm for that. And I'm confident if we hear that we'll figure out the way forward.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah.
I'm reassured there.
Good.
So Kim, you have long said, and over all the years you've been at the city, that what downtown really needs is more people. And we're certainly not lacking right now for these exciting new plans from West Bank, from Urban Catalyst, J. Paul, Google, certainly, Urban Community. What are some of the risks that we face to keep these projects on schedule for construction?
Yeah, I know sometimes, things look very dark right now downtown, but I just want everybody to know, I still believe the future is very, very bright for our downtown. And the main reason I believe that is because we have 3 or 4, I'm going to include Urban Catalyst in that, anchor developers who are committed to the long-term significant investment in our downtown. And their commitment has not waned at all this last year. So I am talking about West Bank and Urban Community, who has 5 or 6 major projects underway. I'm talking about J. Paul, Urban Catalyst, who you mentioned, taking advantage of the opportunity zones and moving forward nice projects. And then, of course, Google and all of the development in the Deardown Station area. These are all massive investments of a long-term nature, generally privately financed, bringing in global resources, global architecture, taking very significant risks, but really believing in San Jose and taking a very holistic approach, not just doing buildings and projects, right? But caring about the whole fabric and creating downtown. So I believe that these will move forward, but we need to do our part. And right now, our part is these street level quality of life issues, getting on top of them and having a plan that we work together. Let me just give you an example. The Miro project, right across from City Hall for Bayview. They're going to lease out 1,000 apartments there. They're going to, the ratio is, if you want to lease 1,000, you need to show 10,000 people, right? So right at this time where downtown is in its darkest place, we are having potential tenants to move into office buildings and potential renters and owners of condos and apartments visiting our downtown. And so that's really our work, to do everything we can to make that street level better, because it's essential for our recovery. But the future is bright, including the continuation of BART coming into downtown with a new administration. The underlying fundamentals here just are envious.
And Kim, are you going to be one of the presenters here next month when we have the Downtown West plan in front of the City Council?
I'll be there cheering, formally or informally.
And I would like to give a shout out. You know, we mentioned some of the major developments, but I came in on San Fernando this morning, and I want to say that Adobe has got their skin going up on their building, and it turned my head. I said, that looks pretty darn cool.
Yeah, we will always be indebted to Adobe for being that first urban tech pioneer. They're fabulous. They're doubling their capacity in downtown San Jose. Construction has continued through COVID. Yeah.
So Kim, I recall some tough conversations we had as redevelopment was cratering, and you know, their budgets were going away. They certainly supported a number of things in the city, as well as some contract services with us. And I remember we were talking about what does the role of the Downtown Association, the PBID, groundworks. And so I'd like to ask you, you've hinted at this a little bit in some of your previous responses, but what is the work of a place management organization like ours viewed? How is it viewed inside the city? And what can we do better as partners with the public sector?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that in 2011, when redevelopment went away suddenly, it was a crisis. That was an unexpected shock. And I remember speaking to the Downtown Association and trying to emphasize two things. One is that redevelopment was absolutely essential over decades in building the good bones and the infrastructure for our downtown. But the second thing I think we all knew was that great cities, great downtowns are not built because of government leadership, right? They're built because at some point in the city's evolution, private entities and individuals who care really start to step up, and market forces start to supplant that need for big government subsidy. So I just want to give a shout out to the Downtown Association, you know, and the formation of the PBID. It was a really critical part of managing that transition and filling that void. You know, and there were others. Like one person I just need to acknowledge publicly is Carol Coletta. Many of you probably don't even know her name, but when Carol was with CEOs for Cities and the Art Place, National Philanthropy, and then the Knight Foundation, she invested a lot in downtown San Jose, including Downtown Association, arts and culture, at a critical time when those redevelopment resources had fallen away. So you know, when we transitioned from this model of public subsidy and, you know, going to government for everything, these private partnerships became critical. And I just can't emphasize enough how critical the PBID services are, how the city views them as very high return on investment. Like, you know, we fund them too as property owner downtown. And this has been a model that we have actually been trying to encourage in other places, but it takes leadership and it takes commitment, but it is the future. We'd love to see more of this model in more of the geography of downtown and ultimately in other commercial corridors across the city.
The city has enacted several new taxes, fees, and policies on development the past few years. And Kim, you're right in the middle of it. You know that the studies show very thin margins between our regulatory environment equity goals and market conditions, you know, relative to construction costs, land values, and average rents. How would you characterize our current business climate in San Jose?
Yeah, so from a big picture Bay Area perspective, I would say San Jose has a reputation and reality of being very welcoming of growth, and relative to other places, quite business and development friendly, including being open to density and a commitment to being urban. That being said, one of my priorities and the Office of Economic Development's priorities has been to do a lot of education of community and council about the cost of development and the factors that really affect the feasibility of why development will start and why it will stop, right? And what those market cycles are and what we control and what we don't. And this is just really important for city council members to understand. And so we have to be very, very cautious when we feel like we need to add fees or increase fees, that it's not going to undermine development. And right now, construction costs are so high that it really is the major factor, and construction costs seldom go down. So I think we have to continue that work. I think we have to recognize that California is a difficult state for business, personal and corporate taxes. And so it's another reason why cities need to be very vigilant, because we're operating in this California construct. So it's always a balance. Cities are very fiscally constrained. San Jose is going to be very fiscally constrained for a long time because of its land use practices and paying off the redevelopment debt, but we still need to fund important things like affordable housing and city services. So it'll be interesting to see in the next several years, how that understanding plays itself out.
I'm sensing that there's kind of a shift away from our policies that have been trying to correct San Jose's systemic jobs housing imbalance as the bedroom community for Silicon Valley. Are we entering a phase where housing production is prioritized over commercial development?
Yeah, this has been a really big issue for me throughout my whole career. If you look at all of Silicon Valley, it's imbalanced in the sense that there are more jobs than there are housing. If you look at San Jose, we are extremely imbalanced in the other way. Our population has grown much faster than our job base. And that's the reason why every day 50-60% of us, when we used to go to offices, right, would leave and have to drive to other places. So again, we've tried to do a lot of education of council about the relationship between cities' land use and fiscal health. San Jose is very challenged because the vast majority of our land is used for low density, single family housing. That is a money loser for the city. And by that I mean we do not bring enough money in tax revenue to support servicing that housing. During the Hammer administration, the Gonzalez administration, there was a ton of conversion of employment lands to residential lands. There was a ton of pressure to build housing. And what happened then was the city's fiscal base shrank in a relative sense because those employment lands, they bring in more revenue than it costs to serve. So right now, the other cities in the South Bay, 25-35% of their land is used for employment lands. In San Jose, it's down to 12%. Right? We put a policy in place in 2006 to preserve and protect a diverse set of employment lands. But I do think because we're all so concerned about housing, there's huge pressure to continue to shrink the city's fiscal base further. And I fear it's so low already. We like to say, once the housing goes away, it's like, once the industrial lands go away, it's like diamonds are forever, right? Once you can convert a piece of property from industrial to residential, it's gone forever, which affects the city's fiscal base and ultimately just the functioning of the city, right? We need places for manufacturing and car repair and recycling and those kinds of things. So it's really an important issue to keep an eye on. And it's why things like the Google Deer Dawn development, where you're taking these empty parking lots and you're adding a lot of intense development is so important. So we need the balance is important. Correcting the imbalance is important. It has to be a both and. But it directly relates to the city's fiscal health. So you need to keep an eye on that.
You and I had some fierce debates and we disagreed on the merits of San Jose moving to a strong mayor system. What is your most compelling argument for staying with our council manager form of municipal governance?
I think, thanks for asking that. I've never spoke publicly about this, Scott, but what I realize is 6 weeks from today, I will be a private citizen. So as long as everybody, understands that when I give my answer, this is the answer when we meet in Cafe Stritch and you ask me, I'm going to give as a private citizen. I'm not speaking on behalf of the, in any official capacity, but I've thought about this a lot, right? I have a master's degree in public administration. I've reviewed all the research on forms of government, and I've been in this form of city government for 18 years. And there, just so everybody knows, there's two major forms of government. What we have is a council manager form of government, where the mayor and the council set the direction and make the policy, and they hire a city manager who hires the department heads to implement the policy and to support the mayor and council decision-making process. And it's this blend of elected official strength and then professional management. In a mayor-council form, the mayor does not sit on the city council. City council is like the legislature, and the mayor is like the CEO of the city, right? And appoints the department heads and literally is responsible for managing the city, sometimes with the support of the city manager. So honestly, Scott, and that council manager form of government, it came into place in the progressive era as a response to issues with management and inefficiency and corruption that had come from that, big boss sort of strong mayor form of government at that time. So in my experience, there's a lot of reasons why I honestly feel like I would not have had the career that I've had or stayed in city government as a professional, but for this council manager form of government. I believe, and these are things that we should discuss and debate, but this form of government, I believe there's room for continuity of strategy. There's less involvement in politics of implementation. Have a young man who worked for me in real estate and then went to San Diego as part of San Diego's transition. And, here, if we're going to build a trail, we have a capital plan and we acquire land and we implement the plan. There, you're implementing the plan, you're going to get a call from the mayor, and the mayor is going to say, look, that council member is not on board, stop the trail plan there. So there's more opportunity for a non-transparent reprioritization of things with implementation. I think there's the opportunity for more competent professional staff in our form of government. We're people, like, this is our substance and our careers. When we're appointed, we're bringing our substantive expertise to bear. We have a huge amount of collaboration in our form of government. Among the senior staff team, we are very much one team that's steering the city. My colleagues in San Francisco and LA, the strong mayor form of government can breed a lot of conflict and turfism among different departments as they're vying for the mayor's attention and budget. I think talent, keeping and retaining talent in our city is our biggest issue. And there's much better chance of keeping and retaining over time senior and middle management in the current form of government. And last, I think a lot about citizen representation. The strong mayor form of government essentially takes power away from the council members and concentrates power in the mayor. And the city manager and the team is no longer in a position of working and supporting and sharing information with all of the council. So I think from a citizen representation and voice, our current form to me stacks up better. I guess just to summarize, I think my concern is that as consideration of a new form, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And be very clear that changing the form of government will solve that problem. because our current form of government, you folks might not always appreciate this, but relative to other governments, we have extraordinarily high bond ratings and rankings. We're very efficient. We're widely viewed as a very high performing city government. And especially given that the city is going to continue to have these huge resource constraints, you know, I think you have to be very cautious about making a shift and being very aware of what you might give up. So again, those are just Kim's remarks as a private citizen. I've absolutely loved this form of government and become a fan of it. And it's really something I'm passionate about, as you can probably tell. I just think we should have extremely inclusive civic dialogue before we make any suggested changes.
And of course, you know, that's what we're doing with the charter review group that's just been put together. But thank you for your candor. And there is a little bit of freedom just on 6 months left, you know.
6 weeks, not 6 months.
6 weeks left. Yeah, I mean, those elbows get a little sharper, don't they? You know. So Kim, we could talk all morning. I can tell you, I've been watching our participant list, hasn't fallen off. You've kept everybody enthralled here. I just got one more question, but I think on behalf of certainly my whole staff, our board of directors, you are really going to be missed. And so what are a couple of the top issues that San Jose residents consider to be important and that Kim Wallish wished she would have more time to have accomplished?
Yeah, well, I still want to convince you to move the farmers market to the weekend or start a second one. That's I just still think for downtown residents, that's something I really care about, not having to drive other places on the weekend. You know, but I think the big ones are the state of our urban parks, St. James Park, Guadalupe River Park. I may continue to be involved. I'm just so passionate about the importance of parks and the serious work that we have to do with our urban parks. Obviously, the Deardown Station area and the Google Downtown West development have been working on this for 10 years. The work will continue for decades. We're coming up on a key milestone for approval, consideration of the Google development this spring, which has just been a fabulous project to be part of. And I have so much confidence. It is an incredible model of inclusive development that is going to be great for the city in the long run. And I've always been passionate about arts and culture. And so just the reopening and the rebolstering of our arts and culture and entertainment, I just think people are really hungry for that. And so I'm sure I'll be a happy participant. But we need to keep focusing on all those elements of downtown that bring us together and create a cohesive society across all our beautiful diversity.
Tim, I hope that you can come back with your samba band and open a new park show for us here in the future. And again, thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. And you know, we still have a bunch of work to do in these next 6 weeks. So I know I haven't had but public goodbye here, but we'll have a chance to talk further here in the next month and a half.
Thank you. And thank you, Scott. And I thank all of you. Like I said, you are what makes this downtown and this city great. And it's just been a pleasure. And I'm just so proud of all that you've accomplished.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Kim. And thank everybody. It's about 9:30. So this concludes our first public meeting for 2021. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.